I want you to picture something for a second. Just close your eyes if you have to.
Okay.
You're looking at a satellite image of this 75-acre island in the Caribbean. And from the air, it is just stunning.
Mm-hmm.
You see these turquoise waters, lush palm trees, luxury villas, massive swimming pools. There's a private mansion right on top of a hill. It looks like the ultimate billionaire's
It
retreat.
looks like
It
success.
looks like paradise. It's called Little St. James.
Oh, right.
But if you talk to the locals, the people who actually live there, who piloted the boats in those waters, they didn't call it paradise.
No, they didn't. They had a much darker nickname for it.
They called it Pedophile Island.
And that stark contrast is really, that's where this entire story begins, isn't it? It's the contrast between the shiny, polished exterior of extreme wealth and the horrific reality hiding just beneath the surface.
Exactly. And today on this deep dive, we are wading into one of the most disturbing, complex, and frankly infuriating sagas of our time, the Jeffrey Epstein case.
Right.
But hold on. Before you say, I've heard this story, I saw the documentary, let me stop you. Because we aren't just recounting the crimes. We aren't here for the gossip. We need to understand the system that allowed this to happen.
We have to look at the machinery. You have to ask.
Yeah.
How does a former math teacher from Brooklyn, I mean, someone who started with a totally normal life, no huge inheritance,
Yeah.
how does he end up with a net worth of $600 million?
That is the $600 million question.
And not only that, but he operates a global trafficking ring while rubbing elbows with literally the most powerful people on the planet. You're talking Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, Prince Andrew.
Even Stephen Hawking. It's surreal.
How does that happen?
It's this incredibly unsettling image. You have these towering figures of politics, of culture, all socializing with a man who is actively preying on the most vulnerable people in society. And the mission for this deep dive is to look past the headlines and get to the mechanics of it. We need to unpack what I call the failure of justice. We're going to look at the pyramid scheme of abuse he created, the controversial legal deals that kept him free, and the explosive revelations from the documents released in late 2025.
And I think we need a quick tone check right now. Usually we like to keep things light, but given the nature of this material, we need to be objective.
Absolutely.
Clinical about the facts, but also real about the horror of it. This isn't just a story about a rich guy behaving badly. These were real victims, real children.
Precisely. We are dealing with allegations of systemic abuse, and we are going to rely strictly on the facts, the court documents, and the investigative reports.
Yeah.
So let's unpack this. To understand how this machine worked, we have to go back to the beginning.
Or the beginning of the end.
Right. Take us back to 2005.
So 2005 is pivotal. That is when the first crack in the facade appeared. A 14-year-old girl in Florida filed a police report. And the details in that initial report are just chilling in how banal they are. She reported that she had been lured to Epstein's home in Palm Beach.
And the hook wasn't something violent at first, right? It wasn't a kidnapping in the traditional sense.
No, and that's the insidious part. It was transactional. She was told she could make quick money, a few $100s, giving a massage.
Which, let's be honest, for a 14-year-old in 2005 is a huge amount of money.
Oh, it was life-changing cash for a teenager.
Sure.
Exactly. That was the hook. But as the police started pulling at this one thread, they didn't just find a wealthy man acting alone with one victim. They discovered what investigators later described, and this is a crucial term, as a pyramid scheme of sexual exploitation.
A pyramid scheme. Okay, usually when I hear that, I think of, someone trying to sell me essential oils on Facebook.
Right.
Or those people from high school who want to be their own boss. How does that logic apply to sex trafficking?
It's a term that describes the recruitment mechanism perfectly. Epstein didn't just victimize these girls, he turned them into recruiters. He structured it so that the girls, mostly aged between 13 and 16, were paid not just for the acts they were forced into. They were paid specifically to bring in their classmates, their friends, their neighbors.
That's diabolical. It's weaponizing trust. You're not being approached by a creepy stranger in a van. You're being approached by your best friend from algebra class who says, hey, want to make some easy money? It's safe. I do it all the time.
Precisely. It short-circuits the victim's natural defenses. A stranger approaches you, your guard is up. Your friend approaches you.
Your guard is down.
Exactly. And that's why it was so effective and so insidious. It scaled the abuse. And we have to look at who he was targeting. He wasn't going after the children of his wealthy neighbors in Palm Beach.
Right. He wasn't recruiting at the country club.
No. He targeted girls from impoverished backgrounds, girls from broken homes, or even from orphanages. He was looking for vulnerability.
He was preying on desperation. He was arbitraging their need for survival against his desire for abuse.
He was, to these girls, a man with a private island, a private jet. He seemed to have infinite resources. He seemed like a god. And when you have that kind of power imbalance, the ability to coerce becomes almost absolute,
They felt they had no power to say no.
and no one who would believe him if they did.
So you have this mechanism in place, this MLM of trauma. The police in Florida, to their credit, start putting this together.
Right. It was dubbed Operation Leap Year. The FBI gets involved. They uncovered dozens of victims. They had a mountain of evidence. By all normal standards, this is where the story should end. The predator goes to trial and goes to prison for life.
But of course, that is not what happened. And this is where the story shifts from just a crime story to a corruption story. This is where it gets really infuriating. Enter Alexander Acosta.
Yes, Alexander Acosta, who at the time was the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida. In 2008, instead of a high-profile federal trial that would expose everything, a secret plea deal was orchestrated.
The secret is the key word there.
It was a shocking perversion of justice. Under this deal, Epstein didn't plead guilty to federal sex trafficking charges, which would have meant
Life in prison.
potentially.
Yeah.
Instead, he pleaded guilty to 2 minor state prostitution charges.
2 minor charges. For running a pyramid scheme of abuse involving dozens of minors, that's like getting pulled over for bank robbery and pleading guilty to speeding.
It gets worse. The sentence was 18 months. He only served 13. And where did he serve it? Not in a typical cell.
No.
He was housed in a private wing of the Palm Beach County Stockade. They literally cleared out a section just for him. And this is the part that still baffles legal scholars. He was allowed to leave the jail 6 days a week to go to his office.
Wait, hold on. I want to make sure I understand this. So he checked into jail at night to sleep, but then spent his days back in his luxury office in West Palm Beach.
Essentially, yes.
That's not jail. That's a bad hotel with a curfew.
It was a work-release program on steroids. His driver would pick him up. He'd go to his office, where he continued to see people, by the way, and then he'd go back to the jail at night.
Unbelievable.
But the most dangerous part of this deal wasn't the jail time. It was the immunity.
This is the part I really want you to explain because it sounds illegal.
Well, the non-prosecution agreement included this clause that granted immunity not just to Epstein for any federal crimes, but to any potential co-conspirators.
Any of them.
It effectively shielded anyone else involved in his operation from prosecution.
But they weren't named. He didn't have to give up names.
No, they were unnamed co-conspirators. It was a blanket shield. Think about how rare that is. Usually you get a plea deal because you flip on your co-conspirators.
You give the government names.
Right. And in exchange, you get a lighter sentence. Epstein got the lighter sentence, and he got to protect his entire network.
That implies massive leverage. You don't get a deal like that unless you have something the other side is terrified of.
Or you have friends in very high places exerting pressure. And the most heartbreaking part is that the victims, the girls who had come forward, were never even told about this deal.
They were kept in the dark.
Completely. The Crime Victims' Rights Act requires that victims be consulted. In this case, the deal was signed, sealed, and delivered behind their backs. They thought the investigation was ongoing, but it had already been shut down.
So for 10 years, he just walks free. He's a registered sex offender, sure, but he's still flying his jets, still living on his island. He beat the system.
He did, until the world changed. In 2018, the Miami Herald published this incredible investigative series by Julie K. Brown.
She's a hero in this story.
Absolutely. She tracked down the victims, she exposed the deal, and she put it all on the front page. That reporting shamed the justice system into action. It forced New York prosecutors to look at this again.
And they did. July 2019, he's arrested again.
This time on federal sex trafficking charges in New York. The shield was finally cracking. He was denied bail. He was sitting in the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan.
But then, August 10th, 2019.
The date everything went dark. Epstein was found dead in his jail cell.
The official ruling was suicide by hanging.
That is the official ruling. But the circumstances surrounding that night were, let's just say, highly irregular.
That's putting it mildly.
We know the cameras outside his cell were broken. We know the 2 guards assigned to watch him were asleep and later falsified records to cover it up. We know he had just been taken off suicide watch, despite a previous incident.
It sounds like the plot of a bad thriller movie. You have a man who holds the secrets of the most powerful people in the world. Presidents, royalty, CEOs, and suddenly the cameras break and the guards fall asleep.
It just defies probability. And naturally, it fueled conspiracy theories on every side. You had people on the left convinced he was killed to protect Donald Trump. You had people on the right convinced he was killed to protect Bill Clinton.
But everyone agreed on one thing.
Someone wanted him silenced.
And that brings us to the present day, or I guess the recent past. The 2025 document release. This was something that was promised for a long, long time.
It was a massive political football.
Mm-hmm.
During the 2024 campaign, you had promises to declassify everything. But then, once the administration took office in 2025, there was this initial stonewalling. They claimed no client lists existed.
Which felt like gaslighting, frankly. We knew there were documents. We knew there were flight logs.
We did. And thanks to immense pressure from Congress and the public, the dam finally broke in late 2025. Thousands of documents were released. And while there isn't a neat and tidy client list, it's not an Excel spreadsheet. The files contain details that were incredibly damaging, specifically regarding Donald Trump.
And this is where we have to look at the documents directly. We're not taking sides here. We're just reading what was in the files. What did we learn about the Trump connection?
Well, for years, the narrative had been that they had a falling out and weren't that close. Trump himself said he wasn't a fan.
Right.
The 2025 files paint a very different picture. Reports in the documents indicate that Trump and Epstein were described as best friends for a period of nearly 20 years.
20 years. That's not a casual friendship.
And not just acquaintances who met at parties. The records show frequent contact, with them speaking multiple times a week during the 1990s.
That's a lot of phone calls. I don't call my mother that often.
It suggests a very close relationship. But the more concrete evidence is in the travel records. For a long time, there were denials about Trump ever being on Epstein's private planes, the infamous Lolita Express. The emails and flight logs released in 2025 contradict that. They suggest he traveled on Epstein's aircraft at least 8 times.
8 times? That's significant. It's not just catching a ride once because your flight was canceled. That's a pattern.
Exactly. And then there was the witness testimony. The files included allegations from a limousine driver who claimed to have overheard conversations as far back as 1995 where Trump was discussing Epstein's activities.
So what does this all mean? I have to play devil's advocate here. Does flying on the plane or being best friends implicate him in the actual crimes?
And we have to be very careful here. Being on a plane or being best friends isn't proof of committing a specific crime. Proximity isn't proof of participation in the abuse itself.
Okay.
But what it does prove is access. It proves that the circles of power were completely intertwined with Epstein's world. Whether it was Clinton, Prince Andrew, or Trump, the theme isn't about one political party. The theme is about a class of people who operated with a different set of rules.
That's the key takeaway, isn't it? It shatters the idea that Epstein was some rogue operator hiding in the shadows. He wasn't crashing the party, he was hosting it.
Exactly. The synthesis of this whole deep dive is that this story isn't just about one predator. It's about how extreme wealth creates a force field against accountability. He used his money to buy silence from victims, to buy legal immunity from the government, and to buy access to people who could protect him.
And speaking of protection, even with the 2025 release, we still don't have the full picture, do we?
Not even close.
Yeah.
And that is the lingering frustration. If you look at those files, huge sections are still heavily redacted. There are just pages and pages of black ink.
It's like they're taunting us. Here's the file, but you can't see the important parts.
But there is a ray of hope. Activists and data researchers aren't giving up. They're using these advanced digital tools to try and decipher the text behind the redactions, analyzing spacing, font patterns, context clues. It's a digital forensic battle.
It feels like the unfinished business of this century.
It is, because as long as those names remain blacked out, the unnamed co-conspirators from that 2008 plea deal are still out there. They're still protected by that perversion of justice we talked about.
The system that protected them is still intact.
That's right.
So let's just recap the journey we've taken. We started with the pyramid scheme, this mechanism of using victims to recruit more victims.
Then we moved to the 2008 plea deal, where a wealthy man got a private wing and work release, while his victims were silenced and his co-conspirators were given blanket immunity.
We saw the system finally try to catch up in 2019, only for him to die under suspicious circumstances with broken cameras and sleeping guards.
And now we have the 2025 files, confirming deep ties to the most powerful men in the world, yet leaving us with pages of redacted names.
It's just a timeline of failure. A failure to protect children and a failure to hold power accountable.